In the small tree-lined town of Maple Ridge, Georgia, life moved at a slow, comfortable pace. The kind of place where everyone knew your name, your dog's name, and what you were having for dinner on Sunday. Among its well-kept streets and manicured lawns lived the Langstons, a family everyone admired, maybe even envied. Marcus Langston, tall and quietly charming, ran a successful construction company that had built many of the homes in town. Elena, his wife of nearly 10 years, was the kind of woman who made perfection look easy. She balanced motherhood, community events, and her husband's busy schedule with grace. Their 2 children were polite and well-behaved. Their home was always spotless, and their marriage, at least from the outside, seemed solid. Together they looked like a family from a magazine cover. Things changed subtly, almost imperceptibly, when Elena's younger cousin, Vanessa Reed, moved back to town. Vanessa had always been something of a drifter, beautiful, impulsive, and unpredictable. After a messy breakup with a boyfriend in Florida, she returned to Maple Ridge with no job, no money, and no plan. Elena, ever generous, offered her a temporary place to stay in the guest house behind the Langstons' home. It was meant to be a short-term arrangement, just a few months to get back on her feet. Marcus didn't argue. He liked Vanessa well enough, and besides, it was family. At first, Vanessa seemed grateful. She kept a low profile, helped Elena with errands, and watched the kids when needed. She found a part-time job at a local cafe and enrolled in a few online courses. She was quiet but pleasant, and Elena appreciated the extra pair of hands. There were even moments when it felt like old times. The 2 cousins staying up late, reminiscing about summers at their grandmother's lake house, sharing bottles of wine and laughter. But the warmth didn't last. Slowly, subtle things began to change. Marcus started spending more time in the backyard, checking on the guest house more often than seemed necessary. Elena noticed but brushed it off. He had built the structure himself. Maybe he was just being protective. Vanessa, meanwhile, began dressing differently. She wore tighter clothes, applied more makeup, and seemed to always be around when Marcus was home. Neighbors noticed the closeness and started to whisper, but no one dared say anything out loud. It was the South after all, and people minded their own business, at least publicly. Elena had no reason to be suspicious. Not then. She believed in her marriage. She had known Marcus since college, trusted him completely, and never thought he'd betray her. Vanessa was family, and Elena felt responsible for her. She dismissed the warnings, told herself it was just gossip fueled by boredom and small-town restlessness. She didn't see the stolen glances, the lingering touches, the smiles that meant more than they should have. But the cracks were there. They grew with each passing day. Hidden behind polite smiles and family dinners, Marcus became more distant, distracted. He came home later, claimed he was working overtime, yet never looked tired. Vanessa, once so eager to find a place of her own, seemed content to stay indefinitely. And Elena, always the attentive wife and mother, began to feel like a stranger in her own home. Still, she said nothing. She convinced herself everything was fine. She clung to the image of the life they had built, a home, a marriage, a family. She ignored her instincts, silenced the small voice inside that told her something was wrong. Because sometimes, the truth is too painful to face, and sometimes, the ones you trust the most are the ones who destroy you from the inside out. Elena Langston had always trusted her gut. It's what guided her through motherhood, helped her navigate friendships, and had even steered her to marry Marcus all those years ago. But lately that same instinct had started whispering things she didn't want to hear, little warnings, like the way Marcus no longer looked her in the eye when he said he was working late. Or how Vanessa suddenly seemed more confident, more radiant, as if she were walking around with a secret she couldn't quite hide. Something was shifting in her home, and no matter how much Elena tried to ignore it, the change was becoming harder to deny. It began with a receipt. Elena found it while sorting the laundry, tucked inside the pocket of Marcus's jeans. It wasn't from any local store, it was from a boutique hotel in the next town over. The date on it was a Tuesday, a night Marcus had told her he was stuck at a late site inspection. The room was booked under a familiar name, Vanessa Reed. At first, Elena stared at the slip of paper, confused. Maybe Marcus had picked it up accidentally. Maybe Vanessa had stayed there before moving in. But deep down, she already knew the truth. Something was wrong, and this receipt wasn't the first clue. It was just the first one she couldn't explain away. After that, everything started falling into place. She began noticing patterns. The way Marcus lingered near the guest house longer than necessary. How Vanessa always seemed to disappear around the same time Marcus did. There were whispers between them that stopped when she entered the room, glances exchanged when they thought she wasn't looking. Marcus had stopped being affectionate, and Vanessa had stopped pretending to care about finding her own apartment. It all pointed to one horrifying possibility, and Elena wasn't ready to say it out loud, but she could feel it in her bones. Instead of confronting them, Elena decided to watch. She began checking Marcus's phone bills and noticed repeated calls to a number she didn't recognize. When she dialed it from a different phone, Vanessa's voice answered. Her stomach turned. She checked Marcus's GPS history and found routes that led nowhere near any job site. And late one night, unable to sleep, Elena followed him. She kept her headlights off and stayed a few cars back as he drove. Not toward a construction site, but to a small motel off the highway. She waited in the parking lot for hours until she saw him emerge. A few minutes later, Vanessa walked out too. Elena didn't cry. She didn't scream. She drove home in silence, gripped by a coldness she had never known before. Everything she had built, every memory, every moment, felt like it had been painted over with lies. And what hurt the most wasn't just the betrayal. It was who had done it. Her husband, her cousin, two people she had trusted completely. But Elena wasn't reckless. She didn't confront them that night or the next. She needed to be sure, and more importantly, she needed a plan. Because if there was one thing Elena had learned growing up in a family full of strong, stubborn women, it was this. Never react in anger. React in control. And if you're going to fall apart, do it after you've won. So she waited. She smiled. She pretended. She played her part as the loyal wife, the supportive cousin, the gracious host. All while gathering information, watching every move they made, and documenting everything. She knew what they thought of her, that she was too soft, too trusting, too blind. But they were wrong. They had no idea what she was capable of. 2 months passed, and on the surface nothing had changed. Elena Langston still attended church on Sundays, still packed school lunches for her kids every morning, and still kissed Marcus goodbye as he left for work. But behind the practiced smiles and polite conversations, Elena was quietly building something of her own, an invisible net tightening around the two people who had torn her life apart. She had kept every receipt, taken photographs of Marcus's car parked outside motels, saved copies of phone records and GPS logs. Her notes were meticulous, times, dates, movements, habits. Every lie, every secret meeting recorded and cataloged with chilling precision. But Elena didn't just want the truth. She wanted control. She wanted to own the end of this story. The opportunity came sooner than she expected. Vanessa had been living in the guest house for over 6 months. There were no more job applications or apartment searches. She had become comfortable, confident, almost smug. Elena noticed the way she moved through the main house now, no longer asking permission. She saw the way Marcus followed her with his eyes, how his hand brushed her lower back when he thought Elena wasn't watching. And so, one afternoon, Elena announced that she was planning a dinner party. She told everyone it was to celebrate her and Marcus's 10th wedding anniversary. She called family, close friends, even invited Vanessa's parents. The invitation was warm and sincere. No one suspected a thing. Marcus was surprised but pleased. Vanessa smiled awkwardly and said she'd be there. Elena made sure she was. She spent a week preparing. Cooked all the dishes herself, decorated the house, ordered wine. Everything had to be perfect. On the night of the party, the Langston home was full of laughter, music, and candlelight. Guests mingled in the living room and wandered into the backyard, drinks in hand. Marcus stayed close to Elena, smiling and playing the role of loving husband. Vanessa arrived late, dressed in a red silk dress that made a few heads turn. She hugged Elena tightly and whispered something that made Elena nod with a serene smile. No one knew that it would be the last time they'd see Vanessa alive. After the party, once the guests had left and the children had gone to bed, Elena stayed behind to clean. Marcus went upstairs. Vanessa lingered in the kitchen, offering to help. Elena poured them both a drink, just like old times. But unlike old times, Elena had added something to Vanessa's glass. By morning, Vanessa was gone. Marcus claimed not to notice. He said maybe she went out early, but her car was still in the driveway. Her purse was missing, but her phone was left behind. Elena played concerned. She called around, pretending to worry. Marcus reported her missing the next day, telling police she had been emotionally unstable and may have run away. The search began immediately. Police questioned neighbors, checked traffic cameras, and even searched nearby woods. But nothing turned up. Elena watched the investigation unfold calmly, offering her full cooperation, shedding tears at just the right moments. No one suspected her. She was the devoted wife, the mother holding her family together. But Elena knew where Vanessa was. She had planned every detail. She had waited until the house was quiet, until Marcus had gone to bed, and then she moved quickly. Vanessa's unconscious body was hidden in the laundry room, wrapped in a thick sheet. Elena dragged her to the guest house where she had already prepared a space behind a section of drywall in the back bedroom. It was a spot Marcus had renovated himself, a place he never thought twice about. She sealed the wall and scrubbed every surface. There were no fingerprints, no blood, no signs of a struggle. Vanessa Reed had disappeared without a trace. And Elena Langston, the perfect wife, the wronged woman, went back to her life as if nothing had happened. The disappearance of Vanessa Reed quickly became the biggest mystery Maple Ridge had seen in years. Flyers with her picture were stapled to telephone poles, shared online, and taped to gas station windows. Her friends, co-workers, and even old classmates joined the search efforts. Local news stations ran features. The cafe where she had worked put up a sign offering a reward for information. The town buzzed with theories, some innocent, some sinister. But no one imagined the truth hiding just a few feet from where she had last been seen. Marcus Langston was the picture of concern. He appeared on the local news with watery eyes, asking for Vanessa to come home or for anyone with information to come forward. He told police she had been distant, stressed, maybe even depressed. He swore they were close, like siblings, and said she had always been a little unstable. Elena stood beside him, silent but supportive, clutching his hand and nodding solemnly as reporters snapped photos. She never spoke more than a few words, but to the public she looked devastated. Behind closed doors, things were shifting. Marcus began acting differently, more anxious, more controlling. He checked the locks more often, kept his phone on him at all times, and started drinking heavily at night. Elena watched him carefully. She had always known he was weak, but now she saw fear in him. It was subtle but unmistakable. He was hiding something. Maybe not the full truth, but enough to keep him up at night. 3 weeks after Vanessa's disappearance, a storm rolled through Maple Ridge. Heavy rains flooded several basements and knocked down power lines. At the Langston property, a pipe burst in the guest house bathroom, flooding the floor. Elena called a plumber, just another repair on a long list of home maintenance. She remained calm as always. The plumber arrived early the next morning. He worked for a small local company and had serviced the Langston home before. As he tore into the damaged wall to access the pipe, he paused. There was a strange smell, faint but foul, not the kind of scent you'd expect from mold or water damage. He pushed deeper and something behind the insulation caught his eye. Layers of plastic sealed tightly. Suspicious and uneasy, he stopped his work and called the police. What followed was swift and horrifying. Investigators arrived that afternoon. They tore through the wall carefully, exposing what had been hidden behind it for nearly a month. The smell was overwhelming. Inside the plastic wrap was the decomposing body of a woman. Small frame, long brown hair, still dressed in the red silk dress she had worn the night of the dinner party. It didn't take long to confirm the identity. Vanessa Reed had been found. The news exploded across the town. People were stunned. Shock turned to outrage. The Langstons' picture-perfect life was shattered in an instant. Police immediately arrested Elena Langston. The evidence was damning. Her fingerprints were on the inside of the plastic. She had purchased drywall materials 2 days before the party, and chemical traces matching sedatives were found in the guest house. But just as the town began to settle into the idea that Elena had acted alone, investigators uncovered something that shifted the narrative. A forensic dive into Marcus's phone revealed a deleted message from the night Vanessa disappeared. Recovered through digital forensics, it read, "It's done. She's gone. We're safe now." Suddenly, the story of a heartbroken wife seeking revenge didn't look so simple. Marcus had claimed no knowledge of Vanessa's disappearance. Now it appeared he had known exactly what had happened, and may have helped cover it up. The case turned from a solo act of vengeance to a tangled web of lies, betrayal, and mutual destruction. Maple Ridge wasn't just dealing with a murder anymore. It was facing a conspiracy. The trial of Elena and Marcus Langston gripped the town of Maple Ridge like a slow-moving storm, inevitable, ominous, and impossible to ignore. The courthouse overflowed with reporters, neighbors, and curious onlookers. Local news trucks lined the street outside, cameras trained on the courthouse steps. Inside, 2 people who had once been the town's golden couple now sat on opposite sides of the courtroom, united by one terrible secret and divided by the fear of who would fall first. Elena was charged with second-degree murder, tampering with evidence, and improper disposal of a body. Marcus was charged with obstruction of justice, accessory after the fact, and abuse of a corpse. They both pleaded not guilty. The prosecution painted a chilling picture of betrayal and calculated revenge. Elena, they said, had been a woman scorned, watching silently as her husband and cousin carried on an affair under her own roof. But instead of leaving or confronting them, she plotted. The prosecution argued that Elena had drugged Vanessa, killed her, and then meticulously sealed her body in the guest house wall. The motive was clear: rage, humiliation, and a desire to reclaim power in a life she no longer controlled. But the defense told a different story. Elena's lawyers didn't deny that she had played a role in Vanessa's death. Instead, they argued that she had been manipulated by Marcus. According to the defense, Marcus had orchestrated the cover-up to save his reputation, using Elena's emotional vulnerability to his advantage. They suggested it was Marcus who had supplied the sedative, Marcus who had helped move the body, and Marcus who had sent the chilling text, "It's done. She's gone. We're safe now." Witnesses were called. Hotel employees testified about Marcus and Vanessa's secret meetings. Phone records confirmed months of contact between the two, filled with late-night calls and coded messages. Elena's internet history was entered into evidence, revealing searches about sedatives, body decomposition, and how to seal drywall. But then came the twist. Surveillance footage from a local hardware store showed Marcus buying the same type of plastic used to wrap Vanessa's body, just 2 days before the murder. The jury watched in stunned silence. In the final days of the trial, the courtroom turned tense. Marcus's defense team tried to shift all blame onto Elena, painting her as emotionally unstable, obsessive, and controlling. They argued that Marcus had been unaware of her plan until it was too late, and that his only crime was panicking and failing to report it. But the damage was done. The text message, the hardware store footage, and the clear timeline of deception left the jury with little doubt that Marcus had known far more than he claimed. After 2 weeks of testimony and 3 days of deliberation, the verdicts came in. Elena Langston was found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to 25 years in prison, with no possibility of parole. Marcus Langston was found guilty of obstruction of justice and abuse of a corpse. He was sentenced to 12 years behind bars. The Langston children, caught in the fallout of a story they could never fully understand, were placed in the custody of Elena's older sister, who moved them out of Maple Ridge for a fresh start. The Langston home was sold at auction. The guest house was demolished, its foundation ripped from the earth as if the town itself wanted to erase it. In the months that followed, the story of Vanessa Reed's murder faded from national headlines, but it never left Maple Ridge. The betrayal, the secrets, and the quiet horror of it all became a part of the town's history. A warning whispered in kitchens and on porches, behind drawn blinds and nervous glances.